Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the July 2nd meeting of the Select Board, calling us to order. I'm going to begin with announcements. If you would,
I would.
Mr. Carlson.
Thank you. A couple of announcements tonight. The 39th Annual Lions Club Patriotic Concert is Wednesday, July 3rd at 7 p.m. The concert will feature Dan Gable and the Abletones, an 18-piece big band specializing in the music of the 1930s, 40s, and featuring the Moon Maids Singing Quartet. Bring a lawn chair or a blanket and enjoy the show. It'll be held up at the Grafton Common. In addition, on Saturday, July 13th, behind the Municipal Center, Boy Scout Troop 107 will hold their next bottle drive. The Scouts will also be accepting non-perishable food donations for the local food banks. Money raised supports the Scouts' campouts, activities, community service projects, and routine expenses, and 10% is donated to a local charity. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Moving on, I just have one town administrator appointment that needs to get affirmed. Chris, if you can come up and introduce yourself. This is for a new firefighter position.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Kazupi. I currently serve as an auxiliary firefighter for Station 1. I'm located at 4 Carroll Manor, North Grafton, Massachusetts, and been a resident of town for all 24 years of my life.
Perfect.
The chief did interviews, obviously, and recommends him, and I support that recommendation, obviously.
Awesome. Entertain a motion then, please.
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to affirm the appointment of the town administrator and promote Christopher Guzippi of Station 1 to regular status.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just want to say one thing. I've actually known Chris many years, and he's a great person. I'm sure will be a real benefit in this position. So congratulations, Chris.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Welcome aboard. Thank you very much for your service,
Thank you.
and enjoy the evening.
Thank you. You as well.
Sure thing.
All right, we have a couple public hearings for the seasonal beverage licenses for the farmers market. We have to do them separately. The first being Aranap Cellars.
Mr. Chair, 1 second here. I gotta move back up.
All right.
Like I said, everything's a bit slow today.
I move the board vote to approve a season.
Wait, we can have a public hearing first.
Oh, sure thing. That,
This is the one that's for, gives them permission to do it every
Oh, I
single
see.
week
Okay.
instead of
So
having.
legal
I'm
notice.
getting way ahead.
I got it right up here, yeah. Thank you. Okay, legal notice from the Select Board. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the General Laws as amended that application has been made by Aranap Cellars LLC doing business as Aranap Cellars Limited Liability Corporation. Noel A. Powell, manager for the business, seasonal wine beverages licenses specifically for the purposes of selling at premise located at the Grafton Town Common Farmers Market, Grafton, Mass. 01519. Upon this application, the Grafton Select Board will hold a public hearing in Conference Room A, Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, Grafton, Massachusetts, on Tuesday, July 2nd, 2019.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearings.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public hearing is open. Is there anybody here to speak on this particular piece? Come on up, sure.
I'm gonna turn the AC on, excuse me.
I'm Noel Powell. I'm the owner of Aranap Cellars, so we're just seeking, I think this will be our third season at the farmer's market this summer, and just looking forward to coming back and sharing our wine with the town of Grafton.
Sounds terrific.
Great.
Does anybody have any questions? Anybody in the audience have any questions? Get the public hearing closed.
Mr. Chair, a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And we just need an approval.
I move the board vote to approve a seasonal wine beverage license to Aranap Cellars of Westford, Mass. For the Grafton Farmers Market, operating through October 9th, 2019.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. Enjoy the summer.
Thank
Hope
you.
guys
Thank
have
you.
a lot of success. And next up.
All right, next. Legal notice from the Select Board. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 130 of the General Laws as amended that the application has been made by Aeronami Farm Vineyard, Marissa O'Connor, manager for the business, seasonal wine beverages license, specifically for the purpose of selling at premise located at the Grafton Town Common Farmers Market, Grafton, Mass. 01519. Upon this application, the Grafton Select Board will hold a public hearing in Conference Room A, Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, Grafton, Mass. On Tuesday, July 2nd, 2019.
Make a motion to open a public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The public hearing is open. Is there anybody in the audience here to speak on this particular subject? Does anybody have any questions for anybody? Anybody? Nothing. All right.
Motion to close public hearing.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Give me 1 second. Was she supposed to attend?
We invite everyone if they didn't contact us that they weren't. They were here last year.
She was. All right. Well, I think she's gonna be okay regardless.
I think
All right. Sorry, Mr. Costa, please go ahead.
I motion that the board approve an application for Agronomy Farms Vineyard for seasonal wine beverage license for 2019 at the Grafton Farmers Market.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
There we go. That's done. All right, the third thing I have, I put it up here with the rest of the public process type of stuff, is the MRC. We've talked about this a couple nights. We've gotten some feedback concerning questions from town council. We've had responses to town council and responses to the responses. So the goal of this evening is to make sure we have a firm policy in place on what we want to see happen with the MRC in town. And then any other questions or recommendations or things of that nature. We did get a couple recommendations from the town administrator's office, I believe it was 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah, probably 3 and 2 was the asking of the questions of council, I believe.
So this is, what I would like to see is the last evening we talk about this. I want to make sure we have some resolution and move forward with it. Of course, we are past the deadline now because it is July 2nd. So we're backtracking on anything that we do moving forward, but I don't particularly see that as getting in the way of anything. So I'll open it up to questions. I'll open it up to anybody who has recommendations or what have you.
So I read the opinion from Ginny. And I mean, this is her opinion of what the town charter says. And personally, I feel that this contract falls outside of that authority. The way that we approach this contract with the definition of what an employee is. And I understand there's certain language in the charter that says, you know, the town administrator negotiate all contracts involving any subject within the jurisdiction of the office of the town administrator, including contracts with town employees. So as it makes the inclusion of town employees, in this case, you know, this one isn't a town employee. It's very clear in the contract. But one other piece of the contract that I personally feel is that it was negotiated with a renewal clause, and that with that renewal clause, town council had to have reviewed that when she signed it. But nowhere does, and I'm concerned about this because nowhere does there any initials from the town administration that signed that contract. So I guess moving forward, you know, any contract that we have to have specific controls under, that we need to have the town administrator, I would hope that we wouldn't have confusing language in the contracts that allow the Board of Selectmen, in my opinion, to renew it, if that's the case. And that town council should review it clearly and understand that there's conflicting languages that is written within that contract. And to me, personally, it's one of the few contracts that I see that the Board of Selectmen, based on what this town has agreed upon and signed in back in last year, that the previous board members made an motion and passed. I strongly feel that I think the easiest course of action still to this day is to renew the contract. And long-term, after reviewing what the MRC is and looking at other medical reserve corps throughout Massachusetts, I noticed that some of them have formed 501c3s. And because the MRC is mostly community-based and not necessarily municipal-based, that I feel very strongly that in order to preserve the community aspect of managing volunteers, that perhaps this board should explore the possibility of recommending about making it a 501c3 and finding a 501c3 that would be the fiduciary agent for the MRC moving forward. It can be done. It has been done, so it's not like we're reinventing the wheel here. But I do strongly believe that between CERT, which the town has, which is handling, any of the emergency responses that Grafton has specifically, but MRC encompasses over about approximately 16 other communities today. So I kind of feel that moving forward with this, I think the easiest course of action, in my opinion, is to just renew the contract. I know Tim has given his recommendation to us. We received an opinion from legal, but it's my opinion that I believe the easiest course of action would be to renew the contract, and then the long-term plan within the next year, taking any necessary steps to move it into a 501c3. That's all I have to say about that right now, Mr. Chair.
And I just want to mention one thing. I had a conversation via text with Mr. Finn from the Board of Health today, who had made a couple suggestions, and just briefly, seeing that Austin is here, would you mind just going over what, I know I didn't talk to you directly, but Mr. Finn talked to me about you. And I just got this late this afternoon. Just a suggestion that you had come up with. It must have been when you guys were talking at some point in time.
Yeah, just Dan and I were just talking about how the increasing administrative burden for the town administrator is kind of the driving issue for getting rid of the Greater Grafton MRC. At least that's what it seems to be. I was willing to offer some time to help get these deliverables in order to get the Greater Grafton MRC still under Grafton as the host agency to help prepare these deliverables quarterly for the funding reimbursement from the grants.
So basically the administrative piece that Becca has to deal with now.
Yeah, I'll be willing to offer some time, as much time as needed to get these done. In a quarterly fashion. I mean, this weekly, hourly would be too much for me to do, but so it would have to go to a quarterly payment.
Can I just make a point of clarification?
Sure.
Just
Please.
3 weeks ago, the board made it clear, the Board of Health made it clear, they didn't want to dissolve the MRC to any other community. They
Right.
wanted to keep it in Grafton. So that, you just said that we would I'm in favor of letting it go.
No,
Clearly, we're not. My second proposal after joining Worcester was to have internal staff do it for
Okay.
that continuity of service and control over all the pieces that we aren't familiar with, or more familiar with today than we were
yeah,
even 2 months ago.
seriously, yeah. So I mean, this would involve getting the grant manual and kind of understanding how the funding actually comes to to support the Greater Grafton MRC. I'd be willing to take on that.
But we have someone
be a
to do
burden.
that.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, because we wanted to go down the road of keeping it in Grafton, we started the process of having that administrative function and the service of the training and deploying volunteers to be done in-house through the police department.
Oh, through the police department, and they have given a letter of support for that.
A letter of support.
I mean, do they?
I have staff that I talked to, the chief and to Mary Ann,
Yes.
as well
Okay.
to take that on.
Austin, this was one of the recommendations that he had
Yeah.
come up with a couple weeks ago. So if this particular avenue is not, won't work, I just want to make sure it was at least aired.
Yeah.
Seeing that there's volunteers on the Board of Health who, of course, volunteer their time to be on the Board of Health anyways,
Yeah.
to do
I
some
mean,
further work. Seeing that it was their suggestion and recommendation that they voted on to keep the contract and extend it for 3 months, which I don't think we can do. But inherent in that was the extension of the contract and keeping it with its current coordinator. And of course, maintaining our status with the MRC and our leadership role among the 16 communities.
Yeah, I just had concerns about the police department being able to take on the whole role of the Greater Grafton MRC on top of the duties that they are already doing. So this would involve keeping the Greater Grafton MRC with a coordinator, and I would help get the grants to fund that.
Yeah,
As a-
the person right now that we have will do all the grants administration as well.
As well?
They do for 911 grants and emergency management grants. So
Okay.
we can, if we need help, we need to get our own legs underneath us to make sure we got it right.
Mm.
But once we do that, we'll be happy to onboard you, but
Okay.
Thanks, Austin. I appreciate the time. So Tim, while you're talking about your recommendations, why don't you walk us through? I read the paragraph that you had, just everything that you're going to do over the next year. Who you're going to employ, how they're going to work, where the hours are coming from, how they're going to get paid. Do they have enough time, et cetera, et cetera?
okay.
Thank you.
I'll try this again for the third time. That's, the goal,
Yeah, I'm sorry,
as
do you
directed
not-
by the board 3 weeks ago.
Do you not want to?
But no, it's repetitive, and and maybe I'll get better at it this time than I did the other two
All
times.
right. Well, maybe
So 3
you-
weeks ago,
and I appreciate
the
that.
board instructed me to make sure we keep Greater Grafton MRC intact, so we worked towards that goal. I made two recommendations to the board. At that time, they said, hey, let's seek an opinion from legal counsel, which we did, which there's controversy over the agreement of what the charter means, as stated from Peter. Talking to you, Bruce, today, we talked about tonight being a policy discussion going forward for next year, looking at a 501c3, which takes an attorney, tax accountant, filings, so forth. We can certainly go down that track, or having another town host it. So we did discuss that today as, one of the policy goals that might come out of this meeting. We did apply for the grant last week. We're waiting on the approval for that now. We didn't get approval on that grant, I think, until October last year, so we're way ahead of the game in terms of staying up on the state to make sure they turn it around quickly. So we established today, myself and Mary Ann as administrators in Mass Responds. We are planning a member community outreach or kickoff meeting with the town managers of the 12 or 14 or 16 communities, depending on who you ask. We're also inviting the Board of Health of those to attend that kickoff meeting for August 12th, or the week of August 12th. We haven't set a date yet. The first deliverables training will be in September or October. Training on the system for Mass Responds is being worked on now for next week. We do have a scheduled shingles vaccine clinic that the Board of Health notified me of for July 10th, which will require volunteers to be noticed, which we will do that. And again, going back to the beginning, having internal staff responsible for an emergency management situation, with Mary Ann being a seasoned dispatcher and be able to handle many tasks and responsibilities in an environment that is chaotic, to say the least. This is something from a planning perspective can be done, from a training perspective and coordinating volunteers, because at the end of the day, we have to remember we are recruiting, retaining, training, and then deploying them if necessary. That's the core function. No matter how we want to make it more complicated than that, that is what we're doing, and we can do that. I wouldn't have proposed it if I couldn't with the internal staff that we have.
So Mary Ann would be the point person. She would be handling everything.
Yes.
How many hours a week does she currently work?
40 or 35, 37 and a half. I think dispatches are.
All right, so this fits inside that 37 and a half?
No, it'll be overtime. We'll pay her time and a half based on deliverables. Using the grant.
Stipend to her pay.
Yeah.
right? Yep.
She's not a union position?
No, sir.
All right. So the idea would be Mary Ann would do everything that Lindsay and Becca is doing now under one umbrella. We'd be paying her time and a half to do it on top of her normal duties.
Correct.
Okay. Has she ever run one of these type of positions? Is she affiliated in some way now?
She's a member of MRC
Like a
What does that mean
a
now?
volunteer?
as a volunteer, so,
So she knows what MRC means, not
Yeah,
necessarily what it.
no, in terms of reading a grant manual and going out and deploying what the grant deliverables are,
Okay.
I have no doubt that she can perform that.
So in the timeline of when you were coming up with the recommendations, when did you come up with this particular recommendation? Was this before or after you wanted us to leave the MRC and farm it out to Worcester? Is this something afterwards?
Yeah, it was when there was not an appetite for Worcester to become the,
So basically, the Board of Health meeting that we were at a few weeks back, a month ago maybe
yeah,
now.
June 4th.
All right. So I'm gonna let somebody else. I'm gonna gather my thoughts real quick. But if somebody else has something to say, now is the time to do it.
Relative to what we're talking about right now or in general?
MRC. So we got a policy. We got a statement back from Jenny, basically stating that the Board of Selectmen is here to provide policy guidelines. I guess and it's pretty broad. And she actually mentioned that it was broad policy. It doesn't say that in the charter, but that's kind of what she sent. So we either agree with that or we don't agree with that. If we agree with it, then we basically, our policy is whatever we vote on the particular policy. MRC staying in-house, and then Tim has come up with a recommendation, and away it goes, because it's his responsibility to administer the policy that we provide him.
Well, as reflected in the memo that I submitted, I do disagree with Jeannie. I respect her opinion and I understand where she's coming from. As frequently happens, lawyers often disagree. Certainly we can disagree without being disagreeable. I just, I think she came at it from sort of a conclusory perspective where, her vision is policy to the one side, personnel to the other side, always. And that's helpful for municipal attorneys. It keeps things very, very clear. But what keeps it clear for me is charters and statutes say what they say, and they don't say anything else. So that all having been said, I think there is a point at which that discussion's kind of academic, and it leads us to sort of the same place in a roundabout way. Either we accept my interpretation of what the charter says, and we thank Ginny for her opinion, and we can go ahead and bring a motion to renew the contract and direct him to negotiate the terms specifically and be done with it, or we accept Ginny's position and we vote on Tim's proposals. But if we accept Ginny's position, then Article 20 of the bylaws come into play where we have to approve Tim's proposals, and we can say no to those. So it sort of leaves us back in the same place where we've got potentially a board who is going to disagree with Tim's proposal, and potentially a town administrator who's going to disagree with what we say, and I'm not sure how that's all going to work out. I guess we'll find out in a little bit. My concern here, though, is a little bit broader, to go beyond the personnel. Even if you accept what Ginny wrote, then we still do have a role to play here as far as policy goes. And while, as Tim said, it's, we're not now moving to do away with the GGMRC or move it to Worcester, but certainly there's no denying that as of the middle of May, that plan was afoot, and that, there were emails sent out to begin that process without ever having discussed it with us. So personnel aside, the authority of this board was undermined when that happened. So it's fairly clear to me that, we're not operating along the lines of, an honest disagreement about what the charter says. We're operating here, we've had, I appreciate, Tim, you've read this 3 times, but we've met every week for a month on this. This is now, what, our 5th meeting in a row? I've taken so much time out of work to discuss things with Lindsay Fox and to reach out to Board of Health members and to go through the charter, to go through the bylaws, to read the contract again, to, 3 hours writing that memo. So, there are a lot of things here that have caused a lot of needless headache. So I'm looking for, not only a resolution of this issue, but some assurances that, the administration knows what happened here was a mistake, and this isn't going to happen again.
So I guess to compartmentalize those particular things, we have one issue before us tonight, which is deciding on MRC. and where we want the town to go with it. And the other issue is what you just spoke about. Jen, did you have something?
Well, I feel like we already decided on the MRC weeks ago. We decided to keep the MRC here in Grafton. That was a policy decision, and we made it, and now it's up to the town administrator to administer that policy. And personally, I take the opinion of our town council, who is a municipal attorney, over the opinion of a board member.
Then that's completely fine. I understand your position. But for this, so taking a step back, say Jenny's right. We go round and round and round about the policy, things like that. And we're in the 11th hour, and now we're coming up with a plan to institute our policy, which of course we would have to vote on, or it's not really a policy.
That's
No,
not true.
No.
We don't have to vote on the administration of a policy. That is his responsibility. We already said we want to keep with the Greater Grafton MRC. We don't have to,
No, we didn't vote on it, and I would like to have a vote on that particular
On
piece
keeping
tonight.
MRC in Grafton?
Yes, of
Yes,
course.
we did. We voted unanimously.
Did we?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
I thought so.
yeah.
On staying in.
And
the-
staying in
The way to go
MRC.
about it.
And
Yes.
then bring two recommendations
All
to
right.
you.
But
I don't remember the vote, but okay. Now
Just
I'm up to
two,
speed.
2 points clarification, just so we can be clear. The email sent on the 13th giving notice that I wasn't renewing or didn't intend to renew, and asked for a meeting with Board of Health, which happened on the 4th, 27 days later. We had time even here that there was no discussion on it, but we all knew it was happening. I did send the email to the state saying, hey, how do we go about it if we were to go to be absorbed by Worcester? If that's wrong, then I will apologize for that, but I figure I have to ask the question to know what the options will be for the board to consider. And that was not one that you wanted to consider, so I did not go forward on that. So to keep it in-house, the way we have it programmed now, we'll keep it intact, and we'll move forward. I mean, I've been doing that since we, got here, because I just have to keep that ball moving forward. I want the grant application in, I want to get the grant funds, I want to keep those volunteers engaged, we want to set up trainings, we want to get them deployed. We're doing all that work, and we're going to continue to do it. But as for the voting on the policy that's set forth from personnel administration, I don't know how you arrive at that conclusion. I don't know how you would vote on whether I give someone a stipend from a grant for Green Communities with Leah. Never done that. All of that stuff is internal within the budget that's appropriated by town meeting. So even the proposal to run it internally with the police department, I don't think it's an actionable item by the board.
there's no vote to be had, except for keeping,
So why recommend it at all?
Because you told me to.
Okay. And if we don't like the recommendation, or we don't like last October, if we didn't like the contract, we could say no, and you'd have to go back and do something else.
Yeah, I mean, your real options are go back out to bid, join Worcester, find another host community, do 501c3, or do a bid for proposals to rehire a contractor.
Or extend a contract that we were given the privilege to
Yeah,
extend.
but that will not be what I recommend to you.
Okay. So that being off the table. So you want us in the decision-making process on where to go? Who to use? Do you want an affirmation? So when you, for the firefighter, I'll get to you in 2 seconds, okay? The firefighter that came up, we're just affirming that particular position.
Well, denying it.
We can't really say no, it's
You could
your
say no.
hire.
The charter says, hey, you gotta give the board 15 days notice to act on it. If they don't act within 15 days, it's affirmed. If you act ahead of time, 15, you can affirm or deny. So that's completely within your purview to deny that recommendation.
All right.
For
So-
a position appointed.
But not for a position.
not for
stipend.
duty.
Not
Not for
for, okay. So if I disagree and would want to keep Lindsay in place for the year and then move on to something else that we have a little bit more time to manage, like a 501c3, or go back to the Board of Health and get some recommendations from them, seeing that they've been integrated with this particular organization for some time now. You would say no to that?
Yes, I would.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have anything?
I think you were gonna call on somebody.
I am. Ma'am? Can't quite see that far. You have to come up to the podium and just, state your name and, where you live for the record.
My name is Lisa Anderson. I joined this MRC about 5 years ago, and Lindsay came on board about 2 years ago. Lindsay has done a phenomenal job in training and leading us. I don't understand why all of a sudden, after 2 years, she's been doing a phenomenal job, you want her out. Why? And I'd like to know that.
So that's
I-
not,
It comes down to,
Tim,
excuse
okay.
me, I'm not done speaking.
Alright.
It comes down to a personnel thing
Ma'am.
or whatever, but it seems to be like, this is a headhunt.
yeah,
It's
ma'am,
not nice.
It's not.
ma'am,
It's not nice.
it's not a headhunt. We're at a certain point now where we need to make a decision. So
I'm
I
just saying,
appreciate your comment, but,
it's not nice.
that's fine. But if you don't have anything on this particular matter, what we're talking about here, as far as
I would
recommendations.
like to know why he wants her out.
If he decides he wants to tell you why he wants her out, if he says no, I'm gonna ask you to sit down, though,
Okay.
please.
Why
I'm
is
gonna
he
say
want
no.
her out?
I'm not gonna go down the road.
Okay, then
Thank you.
it's not.
Is there something relevant to what we've been discussing here?
You can tell me yes or no, this, or I can take it up later. There's two items I can bring it under.
Yeah.
So just tell me to stop and I'll do it later if you want.
Don't worry.
Tim Roderick, Airport Road. Just a question, as a town person sitting back, kind of watching what's going on, especially this year, there seems to be a disconnect between board and policy and the town administrator, which is not good from my standpoint. So when you look at MRC, you look at the budget issues that were brought up earlier by Mr. Prisby, I think in the spring, there seems to be a disconnect. From a townsperson, that's not a good thing. You guys should be synced in setting the policy and being administered. It seems to be out of whack. So whether it's under this or you take it under goals for your retreat, they see on the back of the agenda, good discussion topic. Okay?
I appreciate that. What was the other piece? Or that was it? That was it.
Bruce,
Mrs. Shinnok?
we have somebody from the Wachusett MRC that would like to talk about them being a 5013, if that's okay?
I'd be very interested.
So my name is Judy O'Donnell. I'm the coordinator for Wachusett MRC. And first of all, I just wanted to make it plain and clear that MRCs have a lot of autonomy because they're federally registered groups. They're not state registered groups. We work collaboratively with the Department of Public Health, but basically we are groups that register with the federal government, not the state. Then we also work collaboratively with all of the community agencies of each community that we cover. I cover 22 towns. I've been building relationships with libraries, hospitals, coalitions, other nonprofits, all kinds of folks. And we also reach out through fairs, one-on-one to community members. And that's what an MRC is all about. The MRC is all about getting it out into the community and talking to folks one-to-one or talking to small groups. I'm in senior housing a lot, doing emergency preparedness programs with the seniors because it's mandated that if you're living in an assisted living or senior housing, that they have education on emergency preparedness for the seniors. So there's all kinds of opportunities, and so there needs to be a goodly amount of autonomy for the unit to be able to reach out in all kinds of different directions in all kinds of different ways. And that is really what the core of the MRC is all about. Doing public health, doing emergency preparedness, and just reaching out and touching each community. And each community is unique, so each community is going to be touched differently from the next community as well. We are 501c3. We were under the emergency management of Hubbardston when we first started out, but both my husband and I are involved with emergency management in Hubbardston, so we decided to break it away just so there wouldn't be any conflicts. So we started as a 501c3. It gives us a lot of freedom to be able to look for other grants. I just received a grant last year to do a healthy homes program in Fitchburg, where we went and talked to individuals, again, one-on-one. We talked to individuals and we put together a booklet on healthy home recipes in both English and in Spanish. So it allowed us to do things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do under the state grant. So 501c has worked for us that way. It also allows us to join chambers of commerce, and also allows us to get some discounts. We do have to file tax. We have tax information, but it's really a simple e-postcard. We are under $50,000 a year, and so it's just a very simple matter of staying in touch with the federal government and letting them know that we're abiding by their IRS rules. Filing for a 1023, they have a new form called 1023 Easy, and it's fairly simple. Lindsay can do it on her own. She doesn't need a lawyer to do it. There are some structure. One of the things about filing for a 501c3 is it does ask you to have a good, strong structure. So we have bylaws, we have standards of operations, we have all kinds of policies, we have all kinds of, I have book after book after book that allows us to function in a very structured manner. And the 501c3 drives that. I'm just here basically to offer and answer any questions that you have. If you have any questions of me.
Was your MRC a municipal entity before being a 501c3?
Never.
Okay.
Never. So
How many other, statewide, how many other 501c3s manage the MRC program?
I know of at least 3 others, and 2 out of 3 of those are very large. Lisa Jackson set up for Region 4A as a 501c3 a long time ago. In fact, that's where I learned my information was from Lisa Jackson.
How many people are working for the organization?
For our organization,
Yeah.
we're actually all volunteer. I get a small compensation each year, and that's it. It's about $5,000, and then the rest of it is all volunteer. We have 3 officers, treasurer, secretary, and a vice president, and then I'm the president.
And how many how many municipalities are incorporated in your service model, so to speak?
I have 22 towns that I cover. I'm in touch with the boards of health. I sit down with them every other year. I make sure that I get to every single one. And the other years, I get to like libraries and EMDs and touch base with them.
So every single municipality you deal with their boards of health.
That's the primary. And then
All right.
the secondary will be the EMDs. When I've gone into talk with selectmen boards, most of them have said, is the Board of Health on board? And I say yes, and then they say that's fine with us.
All right. Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions? Nope. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sir?
Yes. I'm Dennis O'Donnell. You can guess who I'm with. I spent 12 years as a selectman in our community. I'm currently the emergency manager in our town. One concern I have, because in emergency management right now, we benchmark all of our disasters on the 2008 ice storm. And a concern I have, I don't know the person you're proposing to run this job. No qualms about her abilities, don't know anything. But the problem is wearing more than one hat. When the ice storm came along, we had a lot of people that dropped the ball because they were wearing 2 or 3 hats, and you can only do one thing at a time. And I found this out that we had people abandoning one position or another to do something, and that caused a lot of problems. So that's a concern I just expressed to you that you have to think about. Hopefully it wouldn't happen, but if you got a person in public safety, they have a responsibility. And I watched one person totally drop the ball who was a dispatcher. So it's a concern I have. Thank you.
Thanks. So that leads me to another concern I had. So your recommendation process, did you vet the recommendation with the Board of Health?
Yeah, 2 conversations on the phone, not in the
Okay,
phone.
not in an open forum.
No.
So all 22 of the communities that have signed on to their particular 501c3, our contract that we signed in October, and pretty much every path we took to get to this point has always had the Board of Health kind of signing off, so to speak, on this. They're in a different direction than where you're at now, but they haven't had the time to actually hear or give opinion on your recommendation for Mary Ann. Would you be willing at least to meet with them and go through it?
Do they have a different recommendation? Do they have a?
I don't know, you're gonna have to meet with them first.
Have you had a meeting and talked about being a 501c3 for the
Yeah,
MRC?
we have a meeting next Monday.
Oh, so you haven't talked about it, it's on your agenda,
It's on our agenda. What are we gonna do now that we do not have an MRC
coordinator.
coordinator?
But
Or
you-
anybody running the MRC right now?
Well, you do,
We do? Who?
Yeah. Mary Ann DeVries.
So if we had an emergency tomorrow, does she know how to actually?
Debbie.
Response?
Not as of tomorrow, no. No, but we have resources that we can go to through the city of Worcester and the state with Liz Foley that we can deploy those volunteers if necessary.
All right.
So we have backups and we have redundancies.
So, moving forward, we have, only if you're at the podium.
Having somebody, like my husband said, having somebody do a dual role doesn't really work. I've watched other MRCs try to do that, and it fails every time. So I really would recommend that you just have a coordinator at the Board of Health, work with it, and come up with that.
So unfortunately, at this
It's not
point,
up to us.
it's not up to us. So we would have to make another policy decision for this particular matter, which we find of great value to the town, being a safety concern. We would have to move in a different direction and say, look, we want to take more of a active role. 501c3 seems to be a way to get it out of the municipality's hands and send it off on its own, so it has its own coordinator, similar to what we contracted out over the past year, couple years, whatever. If this, see, the weird thing for me is, like, okay, so your recommendation, what you plan on doing, is not really a recommendation, it's what you plan on doing. I just asked you to present it to me here, but you're already doing it, so it's kind of moot. If we get to the point where our policy isn't being administered to the degree that I find acceptable, and this is just me talking, not the board, then there'll have to be recourse. So at that point, if we're not meeting deliverables, if we don't have a favorable outcome, if an emergency happens, or if we start to lose support amongst the communities that are working with us now, it's gonna reflect poorly on you. 'Cause you're taking control of this. So you're our direct report. You're 1/5 my employee. So I just want you to make sure you take that into consideration, because this is something that's obviously very important to me, because I keep bringing it up over and over and over again. If this should fail, you must immediately take action to make sure it gets back on track to where it was before. And we've had a parade of people come through us over these past 3 meetings telling us how great Lindsay Fox is and how the organization is prospering. I want to make sure it continues to prosper.
Tim, when did Mary Ann start assuming the role of MRC coordinator?
Really on the first, but today we had a formal meeting with her to discuss some of the details I covered with you 15 minutes ago.
How is she, how are we going about recording her time for submittal to Worcester for payment for her stipend?
She'll document it on a timesheet. We probably won't use a short force, so we can if they want to log in. But it's about the deliverables and what the state grant requires them to do for training and the hours leading up to that and the training execution itself.
Have you communicated with Worcester that Mary Ann is in fact the MRC coordinator?
Yes,
When did that happen?
today.
Is she going to be reporting on a quarterly basis, or is she going to be submitting regular hourly billables to you guys for forwarding on to Worcester?
That detail hasn't been fleshed out because we haven't got the grant back yet. We haven't got approval for the grant. So we'll probably do it I'm gonna be at Bruce's direction. I take it serious that I have to be included in every aspect of this project. So I'm gonna make sure we have everything we need and get reimbursed for every dollar. And make sure every training form is submitted on time and accurate and covered by the grant.
Ed, do you have anything else, or can I
Go ahead.
chime in? Bruce, I just want to kind of follow up on what you just said, and I'm going to speak again as an individual of the board as well. You know, where I sit, Tim's been doing this job for 10 years. There's been 14, 15 select board or board of selectmen people that have worked with him, evaluated his work, and I will keep him accountable for his deliverables as well. And that doesn't just go for MRC, it's going to go for everything. And if we need to have a discussion someday, an executive session about his performance, that's one thing. But I don't feel like this is any different than any other thing that comes forward. We have to, or I do, have confidence in our administrators to do their job as the deliverables. And if they don't, they will be held accountable. But I have confidence that they'll do it, whatever the decision is. So that's why he makes the decisions of how it's executed and we make the policy. So what I see is there's a little bit of disconnect with that on the board. Because otherwise we would just have confidence in whatever he brings forward. So I do, for the record.
I'm
As
having a
do
hard
I.
time with that, for the record, because we were presented with a contract that were details that were different. I spoke with Lindsay Fox about how this went down. I'm having trouble with this. I mean, I think, you know, I don't know how the community is well served by this move. I don't see it.
All right.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Jen, did you have something? I'm sorry. You said something.
No, that's all. I feel like I've said everything there is to say on this. We have legal counsel opinion. It is, it's the fifth week we're talking about it. We have other business to discuss. I'd like to move forward.
All right.
Pete.
Mr. Chairman, like I said earlier when I made my the opening statement here before everyone else started speaking, that I think the elegant way, out of all of this, and I think it accommodates everybody, and it doesn't change where MRC is served. It still will be served, and, Grafton will be served as well as the other communities, is to have the Board of Health and hopefully us, maybe look at the 501c3 very seriously. Because I do firmly believe that this group is more community-based and not necessarily municipal-based. And I'm understanding the amount of administration that you've disclosed to us that you had to deal with over the past few months. And I'm concerned about even moving forward with it, but that's not going to necessarily change. And the workload is still going to be somewhat detracting from what, to your point, Jen, what we really need you really doing for Grafton. So it is my hope, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels, that maybe we hear back from the Board of Health and they can make that determination on Monday's meeting about how they feel about it. And if they decide that things are hunky-dory the way it is, then to everyone's point, then so be it. But if they decide that, hey, we should explore this because maybe they do acknowledge the same opinion that I do, that it's a more community-based and not a municipal-based, then we take that under advisement. And I think that solves every problem.
Do you have a motion?
I don't have a motion until I want to hear what the Board of Health will agree to.
Yes, but at the podium this time.
I will speak at the podium. Debbie Chenard, Clerk of the Board of Health, a member of the MRC since it was conceived in the town of Grafton. The Board of Health meeting that we had a month ago, our recommendation from the Board of Health, as you all know, was to extend Lindsay's contract for 3 months so that we could figure all of this out. What is the problem with extending her contract for 3 months so that we can go ahead and figure all of this out? I know you do not want to renew her contract, but why can't we extend it while we look at other options like the 5013C and other things? It sounds like Mary Ann's already been thrown in the job. The Board of Health knows nothing about that. We have not met. There has been no communication with the Board of Health that you have already turned over the MRC to Mary Ann. Is Mary Ann going to be able to do an additional 20 hours? Lindsay does approximately 20 hours a week, give or take 1 week for another. Is Mary Ann going to be able to put an additional 20 hours a week on top of her 37 to be able to fill all the deliverables and things that she needs to do?
She's going to meet the deliverables in the grant.
We're going to find out.
So my recommendation, as we made last month from the Board of Health, is to extend her contract for 3 months so that we can work out the details and figure out what needs to happen with MRC. The Board of Health is meeting this Monday, and we can come up with further recommendations. But our recommendation last month was to renew her contract for 3 months so that we could figure this out.
My understanding is the way the grant works, we cannot renew a contract for only 3 months. Is that
But we don't even have a contract
We don't
right
even
now.
have a
We
contract.
just gave
Right,
it to an employee who's getting a stipend.
Right.
But it still has to go through the grant.
Thank you. So the Board of Health is meeting on Monday, and we'll discuss it. The fact that you've already made the decision and that Mary Ann is going to be doing this, what time would you like to be put on the agenda so that you could present it to the Board of Health? Because it sounds like you've already made your decision.
Yeah, because the charter gives me that authority to do that.
Yeah.
All Board of Health appointments are done by the town administrator per the charter. So that's all I can tell you, is I needed to have someone in place, and I took that action yesterday and today.
Thank you.
I gotta let this one go. We've been at this for like a half hour, Lindsay.
I do have a question left. At what point was it decided that Lindsay was going to be paid quarterly and not hourly as it was under the contract that we were given?
I do not have to go back and look at notes and see what we were talking about at the time. I can't tell you that right now.
Why were we given a contract to sign that was inaccurate?
Why is it inaccurate?
Because she's not getting paid by the hour, she's getting paid quarterly on a flat fee.
Okay,
Okay?
so what's wrong with that?
You gave us a contract that was a fiction.
It was based on deliverables for quarterly payments.
That contract was?
Yeah.
Do you have a copy of it?
Not in front of me, no.
Okay, we should for this meeting.
Okay, I didn't know we were gonna litigate this contract. That expired.
Well, we're talking about the MRC. And I've made pretty
The
clear,
MRC
I
is different
think.
than a contract with an individual.
No, but this is, you're talking about the contractor who's facilitating the MRC. So we're talking about whether or not we're gonna pick this person up or go with your recommendation. Part of the problem I have here, Tim, and trusting you as two of my board members do, is we were given something to sign, that this board signed, that was not accurate. And you knew it going into it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, that's a problem.
What does that mean?
That's an enormous problem.
What does
if you
it
don't know
mean
what I'm
to say
talking
it's inaccurate? I mean, you could throw those words out and make it look.
Do you know what,
past
do you know what
aspersions.
inaccurate means? Tell me what inaccurate
Show me where
means.
it's inaccurate in the contract.
Sure, right in the paragraph that says payment, $25.50 per hour.
Yeah,
She's not getting paid by the hour. She's getting paid a flat fee quarterly. You do know the difference between a flat fee
but when
and
you look at
hourly
her
pay.
invoices, her hourly matches the quarterly payment.
Only if it just so happens, and Lindsay's shaking her head. Do you want to come and talk to this? Come on up.
What, Pete? No.
Because
So
now we have a
we're gonna-
discrepancy
hold on.
here.
Can I just ask a
Just-
question? A contractor for the employee, for the town of Grafton. who's
She's not an employee.
Not an
She's an
employee.
independent contractor.
We are gonna hear from her about the terms of her contract.
Yeah, because now there's a discrepancy. Now you're
So
telling me the contract was
you-
accurate.
But you told me earlier that you had many conversations with Lindsay Fox
I have.
about this, and zero with me.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so.
Because, frankly, I don't
ex parte
trust you.
Communication, I'm not a part of.
Ex parte
I can't-
communication.
I don't have a chance to figure out what she might say.
Well, you do here. It's a public meeting. You
I
have a
understand
chance
that,
here.
but
Okay.
you've obviously prepped.
Yeah,
relative
that's
to
what
her
I do
contract
before I
and
come
her
into
take
meetings.
and
Yes.
her perception on it.
Yes.
It's my recommendation not to renew it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's my purview, and that's what I've done. You can have her talk. I'm not gonna go down the road.
I'd rather you answer the question that I put before you, which is why this board signed a document that you knew to be inaccurate at the time it was signed.
I don't think you did sign the contract that was inaccurate.
Okay, well, that's a problem. Okay.
Okay. Well, I don't think I
have a
did.
copy
Here,
of it
and
with
I don't
me.
think that this issue, in my opinion, I mean, you bring up valid points, everybody, but we're talking about really just the MRC as an organization and not really should be discussing individual issues, in my opinion, at this meeting at this time. I do believe that there's some importance to what everyone is saying here. I'm not denying that, but I do believe that what we need to move on with is what do we want to see as the policy of the MRC going forward? You know, given all of the information that we've all heard, we've all shared, and I think we need to look at what's best for Grafton going forward.
We talked about a lot about people being on the same page, Peter. I think it's important that the administration knows this board does direct policy when contracts are put in front of us that we sign. That's our name on it, my name on it. I want it to be accurate. It's an accurate representation of where we are and what policy we are putting forward. And when I get something that is knowingly inaccurate, as we did, then frankly, that's a fireable offense in my book. So.
All right.
You know the process. You can do whatever you feel
You
is
do.
appropriate.
So, Lindsay, just to preface this, what we're talking about here, and this is an aside, it's a conversation for another day. For this
Understood.
particular piece, what we're trying to do is make sure that our policy is in place, which obviously we voted on, at least I hope we did. It wasn't my recollection, but anyways, moving forward, what the board wants to do with the MRC. So we've kind of moved it from the immediate concern, which was the fact that we have no contract now and we have somebody in place who's acting as a coordinator, Mary.
Right,
So,
which I've been in those shoes 2 years in a row, and so that's why I want to comment to that specifically
So
with regard to policy.
if you want to comment on how we're approaching the MRC now,
Yes.
that's valid to our
Yes,
particular discussion.
and I do think it's valid because I don't want Mary Ann to end up in the exact same situation that I'm in. So if Mary Ann has been working effective July 1, I want to highlight that the grant manual guidelines state there are no backfilling costs. There is no contract in place, just like
Yep.
what happened to me. That contract was not signed by any one of y'all until October 9th, which means I was working without a contract, without anything in writing in that say, from July 1 until October 9th. So that leaves the town, the liability on the town, to figure out how to pay this employee, this contractor, whoever this person is. Because the reality is, I went without pay for that period of time, and it became a matter of how are we going to pay this person for Q1? And we were fortunate enough to have a contingency budget of federal funds through the NACHO grant that we received several years ago. That's how I was able to get paid for Q1. Those federal funds have since diminished quite a bit. And so with that said, I would think it's important to find out, for Mary Ann's sake, how is she going to get paid? What is the stipend going to be, and how is she going to receive it, and through what funds? Because you're not going to get that money through the MRC or FEP primary, secondary funding sources.
So Lindsay, at this point now, I'm going to assume that these type of things have already been accommodated for on the town administrator's end.
We have not got approval for the grant. But if we should just not do anything with MRC because we didn't get the grant, just like we did with Lindsay, we were assured we would get it, we had to make application, and we marched on. We provided the programs that she provided from July to October, and when we got reimbursed, you got paid.
We violated grant guidelines. That's what we did.
Well, then, I think it's a signal to the state and to the federal government that they need to coordinate the timing of the fiscal year.
Oh, they
with
did.
July
There's
1.
emails, and I have them.
Yeah. Okay. So if we didn't do that, we went into that with our eyes wide open, right? We came to you in October with the contract. We knew that.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. Appreciate your input.
So, in other words, it hasn't been accommodated.
We're gonna find out. How does everybody feel about the 501c3?
Be fantastic.
I would be open to that discussion. That's a policy issue, and like Peter brought up, and you know, the way I feel about it is this train right now has already left, and I think what Tim has in place, we should consider for this fiscal year. But talk about the 501c3 for moving forward.
So I will reach out to the chair of the Board of Health, and I'll echo some of the thoughts that we had here, if this is acceptable. And then if summertime, but if you can be in attendance when they talk about it, or Becca, and then as long as the schedule permits, I will also attend. And of course,
Great.
it's a public meeting, and everybody can attend if they want to, or watch it. But if there's any particular questions from the Board of Health to what we've talked about here now, I'd like to be the conduit just to be able to say something. So not speak for everybody here, but just for my thought process going through why this was such a prolonged thing. And we got to move on from this to the next piece of the agenda item so we can finish up our business for the evening. But I just want to make sure that when I'm talking about this particular subject material, it's something that I feel that the board has a greater degree of influence over, or would have had a greater degree of influence over. I've been serving in this capacity for 5 years now, half of Tim's tenure in the town for about 15 years now on various boards and committees. My particular interest in this is singular to this. I've worked with Tim on multiple budgets and multiple avenues through all the other facets of what he's done. And in most cases, I completely agree with you. On this one, I figure we would have more exercise of control. We may not, and that might be the case. That's why I emphasize the point that this is something that's dear to me. So I'm going to be taking an extra special look at it. And that's why I mentioned the things that I did. Not on your conduct on budgets or anything of that nature, so I don't want it to be misconstrued in that direction. If anybody else has anything pertinent to say, the ship has sailed, trains left the station, etc., etc. The next piece we have is we have an associate member position with the planning board that was, I guess, motioned and accepted in a motion for a year, and it needs to be 2. Is that...
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
So can we correct this now, and then we can move on to the resignations? Mr. Carlson.
Sure, so if I'm understanding, I have to read 2 subsequent motions, and they both have voted on individually. So I move the board vote to amend its original motion made in error on June 11, 2019, appointing the associate member of the planning board for a 1-year term instead of a 2-year term.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That one worked.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move the board vote to amend the term of the associate planning board member Vikram Davi, appointed on June 11, 2019, to a 2-year term.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move that the following people appointed, accept the following resignations from the following people. Scott Conway, Conservation; Philip Gates, Affordable Housing Trust; Charles Pratt, Affordable Housing Trust; Justin Phillips, Register of Voters; and Gerald LeBlanc, Sewer Commissioners, and a letter and thanks for their service be submitted to their address.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 There we go.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
So next up, appointment for part-time veteran services agent. I move the board vote to appoint John,
Affirm.
no, it says appoint. I will say affirm, John Galena. Did I say that right, Tim?
Yeah.
Thank you. As a part-time veteran service agent.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Justin's here. Do you want him to?
For background, Justin, you can do it. You've been doing this for a while, so can you just talk to the board quickly about the process and why we're doing this?
Tell you what,
Please.
I'm gonna hire you first, because we're in the middle
This
of
isn't. This is.
I'm
we
already hired.
He's already hired.
I'm Justin,
This
I'm
is
the veterans agent for the district.
Yeah, no, I've met you plenty of times before. What I'm saying is, we have a motion and a second, and now we're in a discussion, so let's get that out of here, and then you can bring us up to speed on the veterans program in town, and I'll give you as much time as you want.
He's talking about the appointment that we're making. He's talking
For
about
John?
John, yes.
I could either do it, he came all the way here because Ken's retiring, this gentleman's replacing him. The person we're appointing, or you're affirming the
I get what
appointment
you're
of,
Okay, I mean, he's here, he's gonna be involved in the,
That's fine.
I was trying to make it easier for the board to see the person who's making just like the chief sat here for the recommendation of the firefighter. Sometimes the department heads come in and
Please,
give you a
by all
spiel.
means, go ahead.
If you want to finish the motion.
I know we just messed you up completely.
So we
That was
had
my-
several candidates apply for the part-time position. After several interviews and sitting with some of the members of the board of directors for the district, which are the town administrators, we decided on John Gallina. He's got extensive experience in veterans projects, veterans charities, and is a veteran himself. And he's got the financial background to work with like a town budget. He's familiar with the municipal system. So he's going to be a good choice for the part-time agent to fill the shoes of Ken as Ken retires.
That's perfect.
He's extremely overqualified. I mean, he
Yeah.
was the CEO of a couple banks. But he wants to give back, and that's what we found passionate about him, to work with veterans and make sure they get the help they need and we get reimbursed. So he knows that back office piece as well.
Correct.
And for his, I don't know what generation it is, but the Facebook savviness, the web savviness, that was
For his generation, he is very web savvy.
Yeah.
He knows the internet, and it's kind of surprising. But he's a good guy, so
well, it all fits into the criteria for the
Yeah.
job. So
Yeah.
that's the point I was trying to make.
more than qualified for it. So. Any questions about him or about the district at all while I'm here?
I mean, does everyone know we have a full community district veteran services? So I don't know if the people at home know. You're just appointing someone, they don't know why you're doing it, but we have retirement, we're replacing, it's budgeted, those type of things. As long as we all know that.
I didn't take that into consideration, so yes, I forget this is televised. So
And we are the host community for the veterans
Yes.
district as well.
I think that sums it up very well.
Excellent.
Ken, when last I saw you, I was on FinCom. You had described how busy you guys were. How's your day-to-day going?
It's still the same or a little more busy now. Apparently, all the snowbirds came back from Florida, so I'm still. I would say July 17th will be my 2-year mark, and by that point, I will have probably filed 250 VA claims, which can each take up to an hour or 3 to do,
Right.
as well as we've maintained about 60 Chapter 115 cases, which are for lower income veterans. Help support them with financial benefits from the town that are reimbursed by the state at 75%. So we've maintained about 60 throughout the district. In Grafton, I think we've had somewhere between 5 and 10 over the last 2 years, and it fluctuates pretty regularly.
Are you mostly servicing an older population, or is it varied?
Correct. Yeah, the younger vets my age, 36. I've had like 2 come in my office. Mostly it's the older veterans, 60s or older, Vietnam era or Korea. Our World War II vets are passing, so they're past needing services because they're usually in assisted living or nursing homes or something like that.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and as that population ages out and the newer veterans start to, I don't know if they're going to need as many services, but they're pretty good with the internet. So I'm mostly consulting them on where to find the information versus actually helping them with the applications.
Okay. Because I remember the last time we spoke, there was sort of a challenge with kind of the older population on the internet, and a lot of they were used to processing things by phone, which I know is a little more time consuming. for
Yep.
you.
Yep. We've tried to mitigate that with a couple of databases that I now have access to, and I've got a software program that the town purchased for my use.
Okay.
So it cut down claims with the VA from on average about an hour long to about 20 minutes.
Great.
So saving me a lot of time, allowing me to do a lot more.
That's excellent.
And widows benefits, I mean, I know you deal with a lot of widows and spouses, so that's
We call
it's
them
gonna be a
survivor
third of your
benefits,
business,
so.
but your clients.
Yeah, there's a lot, mostly survivors. Surviving spouses are eligible as long as they haven't divorced the veteran, and the veteran served during wartime. They can get a pension from the VA, and then they're also eligible for the Chapter 115 program here in Mass if they need the financial support.
Great.
Just to dig a little deeper, not to take up too much time, but those VA claims that you filed over the past 2 years eclipsed, I haven't done the math, any we've done in the past for at least the town. But obviously that gets the burden off the state and the burden off of the municipality for those 115 benefits. So in terms of providing better service for long-term without financial hardship to the city, the town, or the state. That's why we created the district. So
The goal is
we're
to keep
certainly
people
meeting that
on
goal.
Chapter 115 for short term and try to get them onto a federal benefit of some sort. If they can get the federal benefit, then that saves the town money and brings some federal money to the person, which they will ideally spend within the district, within their hometown. So that's the idea.
Thanks, Justin.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Justin.
Oh, thank you.
What did we skip? Fire department?
Any further discussion? In the future, Tim, if you kind of feel, I can hold up the motion.
Well, when you said discussion, I thought that was my time. Sorry.
No, not typically, but, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Justin, thank you for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Justin.
All right, under new business, we have a vote to allow me to sign an extension for the intermunicipal agreement for animal control services with town of Westboro and Shrewsbury. Is the agent here?
No.
Is there anything you want to tell us about this?
It's
Worked out
going
pretty
well. I actually had a good report from May, which, no,
Put me on.
oh, you have it up there, sorry. So in terms of reporting and consistent delivery service, we have that with the police department from Westboro and from Shrewsbury to our police department. People call dispatch when they have issues. This is the report. Obviously, it rolls out into an annual report for the town, and it's going well. We just need to update the IMA for, from July 1 to 2020. It was on our radar before the end of the fiscal, but the other communities went first in terms of renewing it, and we're third in line in terms of its renewal. I think Westboro just did it last night.
Second.
Right.
Shrewsbury's doing next week.
Right. Anybody have any discussions, pieces, any questions, anything like that? This is, of course, something we entered into last year.
2018, yeah.
I do have one question, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for not doing this in advance. Animal control services have nothing to do with animal inspection services.
No, but they do talk. I do force John to talk to Melinda at times. Large animals get questions, wildlife gets questions, so we try to coordinate that activity, but no, they are separate.
All right. I just wanted to see if I had to recuse myself from that one.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound like I have to. Thanks.
All right, now I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to extend the animal control services intermunicipal agreement with the towns of Westboro and Shrewsbury from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, and authorize the chairman to sign the agreement and warrant.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I guess I'll sign it because you told me I had to.
I just got that.
Did you?
Last we have is a vote to establish an Economic Development Commission gift account.
Yeah, you wanna handle that one?
Sure. So, before I do the motion, so this
You want
gift
background?
I would like some background first.
Be happy to do that. Usually the chair directs me to give that background.
Well, I was gonna make the motion, but I was ready to move this off.
So I've reported a couple times,
Ready to
and
go.
I've been with EDC a lot relative to economic development initiatives. That we're trying to diversify the economic base of the community, mostly along Route 30. Wyman Gordon came to us a couple months back, and we wanted to talk about zoning and purposing the front portion of Wyman Gordon. During that meeting, we started to talk about the hotel study that we were doing with EDC in conjunction with the credit union. They gave some money. So I, for lack of better terms, I had a hat in hand, and when I was meeting with Wyman Gordon, I asked them for money to do the study, because we just didn't have enough to do it. I wanted to diversify and get some community involvement. So I got a phone call from Ronnie Brooks, who offered up a great donation, and I thought, what better opportunity for us to create an account that the Board of Selectmen would oversee, and you would have to get a petition from me or from EDC to say, we want to spend $500 to do a traffic study or a traffic count or something, or do promotional stuff relative to economic development. So they're going to make a donation. I want you to establish a gift account to do things that promote economic development in the community with those funds that we take into that account.
What happens to the account at the end of the year?
It's just, it's a gift account just stays, all those dollars stay with it, gets expended when the recommendation or the ask comes from the committee to the board approves it.
We did this for Bridge Street, we did this for the Roney Bridge.
Yep.
I do have one other question. So, that's great, you reached out and you're looking to do the study. So my only question is more administrative, just to understand that. So if there's a gift account set up and you say, hey, I would like to do a study on hotel, and it's a $500 traffic study, but let's say they gave you $2,500. So what becomes the purpose of the residual $2,000 for, let's say, said study or whatever the initiative was originally that was made the request?
The donation is separate from the project.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we just asked, and they were just gracious to give us more than what we needed for the hotel study. Hotel study's already funded and paid for. Well, I think I owe them a third for the last document, so
Okay.
this will certainly help that third.
Okay, okay, all right, good, thank you. That's all right. Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move the board vote and create an Economic Development Commission gift account.
There
Second.
we go. Discussion.
I just wanna say, good work. I mean, you went out and got some money that we didn't have from the community, so moving forward with economic development, thanks.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
How much was the donation for?
15,000?
That's awesome.
That is fantastic.
Yep.
And the credit union shouldn't be overlooked either. I think they were 2,500 that they gave, for the study in particular,
Okay.
not for the gift account that's already been.
Just for some relevance, this is for the front piece of Wyman and Gordon. We've talked about it a couple times.
Well, the gift account will be for the community-wide, but I think the relationship as a result of us meeting with Wyman Gordon got us that money to do things community-wide for economic development.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. All right, so another chunk of new businesses came up. It's not on the agenda tonight. It was brought to my attention by Tim today. Is in the past when we've had a lag day, so the holiday on Thursday for July 4th, the municipal center, of course, it would have to report on Friday. So to get some relief from that, to allow them to have Friday off. Of course, not non-essential services anyways. We did this for Christmas Eve.
You have a policy, it's either like, if it falls on a Monday or a Friday. I would have to look at it, but yes, you do. You have a policy and then you can take action because you have authority over the hours of the operation.
So we can shut down the municipal center on Friday, should we so desire.
Let's do it.
I love expressing my authority here, so let's do this one.
Mr. Chair, I motion that the board approve and close municipal center operations on Friday, July 5th, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion?
Enjoy the day off.
Staff appreciates it.
Well-deserved.
They will appreciate it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? I get Friday off. Okay. TA reports. We'll start with you tonight, Tim.
All right, I have a couple things. First thing, I have a question for the board. Creeper Hill, we got that land on 61A, we redeveloped it. With the Russo brothers, we kept a 100 by 100 area out back as a lease for a cell tower. People may or may not remember that. That cell tower company, Vertical Bridge is their name. They called me the other day. We have a 25-year lease agreement with them. And they offered to buy out the term of their lease for a cash payment of $300,000. Over the life, the lowest end, if they don't add any other carriers onto that cell tower, over the 25 years, we stand to make $689,000. So they're trying to get out of that long-term lease commitment. So before they came to me, I think this is clearly a public policy decision that the board would make, because you can have $300,000 to maybe buy a fire truck or do something with. But before I make a recommendation of what I would do, I want to at least ask you what you thought about entertaining that offer.
Just real quick, it's 896,000
Oh, I got
over
it.
25
Yes,
years, not 690.
896, I'm sorry.
Is
How
that,
many years?
how much is left?
25.
Because we've already
Oh.
We're in
collected,
year 3 coming up,
Yeah,
so
so
most of it is left.
the majority of it. Yeah, we've gotten maybe.
So you have good cash flow,
60,000.
and it's added into our revenue in terms of
Yeah.
estimating. And remember, it's a one-time hit, but this is residual for 25 years that,
So you can use it for operational expenses.
yeah, right now we are.
But not if we take the
That's
not
right.
if we take the
Not-
300, then it's a one-time.
Do you want me to straw poll people right now? What are you looking for?
I have a question.
You might have more questions, I don't know.
All right.
I do have a question, Tim. So out of the original agreement, you said, Becca, was about 850,000 over 25 years?
896,000. 900,
Okay.
but just shy.
And that's the max?
That is,
The men, if they add more cell providers on that tower, will get more under the terms.
that's the minimum.
Okay, that's the minimum.
What's the max capacity of that lease?
It depends, I don't,
You don't have a lot of
carriers,
carriers
it
left,
depends on
right? I mean, Sprint's being bought, but, it's tough. I mean, you might have 4 major players and there's one on there now.
If it goes to 2 though, that 896 turns into what? Just give me a hypothetical.
Well, it's like we would get a percentage of the profit of the carriers, so it's really,
Until you do an audited financial on
It's
what
hard
their
to know.
annual.
Okay, all right.
but it's more.
Greater than.
Greater than, yeah.
Greater than
96 over
896,
25 years.
900.
Keep it
So,
simple.
so the reason why I brought up that question was that the way that the industry is moving today is that we're cutting the cord everywhere, and that more and more wireless carriers are going to be prevalent than ever before, and there will be additional competition for higher speed services. So I just want to know that before the board makes a decision on this, that although it's attractive, I believe, getting money up front. I know we've got some capital projects that could use that money today. I just want to make sure that you're making an informed decision based on what the industry standards are doing today, and then taking shorter money in the short term versus taking potentially more money in the long run. So that's all I want to say.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions?
I
Jen,
was
please.
just gonna say, my feeling is we should keep the lease because it's more money over time.
Yep, me too.
I agree.
Doreen?
I agree.
I guess I don't really need to give a straw poll if you wanna.
I feel the same way, but I didn't want to not have the conversation.
Yep.
So that's part of my report. I'm gonna just run through a couple of things if I may. Last week, we filed a project need form with the state for the Safe Routes to School grant program for Millbury Street. Tony LeMay, I should thank him for starting that process. But we did, last Thursday, walk Millbury Street with the state and with the state's consultant, and we made application for July 1. The state only has 15 million for this project. 15 million wouldn't be just designated to us, it's statewide. The next key date for us is July 31st for a project initiation form. Much like the tip for the South Grafton Main Street project, this is kind of the same project scenario in terms of making application as you go through. This was identified in the Planning for Mobility Study and CMRPC study that we did in 2016. So it's a project that had, community support and identified as a need. The project area would be from Oak Ridge to Crosby and pick up the neighborhoods both on the hill and down on Blanchard and Fitzpatrick. Probably not gonna see funding for it until 2022. Doesn't sound that far away, but it is for us. But at least we made the initial project need form and the initiation form. And the consultants and Mass DOT thinks our chances of being successful in the grant rounds are good. And there's no cost for us to go through, it's just time to make the application. So we are working on that. Any questions on that particular piece? Yeah.
Is it one side of the road or both?
Well,
Or have you
there's
gotten that
there's some
far?
issues with telephone poles, so
Yep.
we'll have to go probably past Fitzpatrick, then cross to give a good line of sight for folks. But then there could be taking issues on the other side. So it's not been engineered, we
Okay.
haven't done anything, but I just wanna, people saw us walking out there with the vest, it's a rainy day, there were a lot of people looking at who's outside, so I figured we'll just tell them we're making application for a grant in order to provide sidewalks. That would connect those neighborhoods to get to school, and people who like to walk can have a place safe to walk. Mulberry Street's not the safest place to walk. So it's a start, and I think it goes back to a goal, certainly the board had for me in 2016 relative to walkable community, so it all takes money. So this is just one opportunity for money. We have no idea what the cost is at this point, because we haven't engineered it, we just made the initial application. The ramps in this building, I've covered this a couple times. The only reason why I do it is we have a lot of activity here with the school department, and they rent fields, and I have seniors that park for events. So starting July 7th, there will be limited parking on the back for the senior ramp to the right if you're facing the gym. So Veterans Hall would be open, but to the right, that ramp will be disabled and closed. But we will make sure there's parking available so they can get into the other side of the door the front, the same thing, because we're gonna do both ramps at the same time, starting on the 7th.
Do you mind if I interject just
Sure.
real quick? For parking around the municipal center, especially on days when there's a lot of functions, everybody uses out here to go to the fields. And we had some high schoolers and stuff like that parking up here, maybe staff and administration for the high school as well. Has that been remedied?
Yeah, when you passed the policy to put the signs up and limit parking with the hourly signs for, 2-hour parking, 3 to 7, or whatever the times were, we had the police up here before we opened and before the school opened to see who was parking here. Everybody that was parking here was working in the building here for the school department or staff. So we didn't find, we had one person parking out front that was a high school student, which we tagged him and he's never been back.
Right, so when, on your peak days when the senior center is having a function, what do you feel the capacity is out there? Are you filling up all the spots when they have functions?
When the complaints make it to the middle of the building, I go out there and check. There are nuance to this, right? There was a person, unfortunately, in a walker that parked all the way down here, got into that door and walked all the way down the hallway. But there were handicapped spots that were open, but she didn't have a placard. So there's things like that I try to remedy. But what we've done with that situation is the school, we're gonna mirror what their projects are, what their programs are in the fields, and those days we'll cordon off parking just for the seniors with signage and cones. We are adding parking, if you notice when you drive around the building, you'll see extensions of the wood railing fence. So I think we're gonna pick up 8 to 10 spaces up front. And I try to encourage staff, actually most staff does park out front facing the police department. And all this back row here, if you come in the afternoon, all my staff's supposed to be against the fence or out front. So this opens it up for us. That other end, when school has a project or a function, I just have to know about it to coordinate it with the senior center so I can get some signage just for those events.
So we talked about, and I'm taking some liberties in your TA report to have a discussion piece, but we talked about the parking down at the ends, the field that burns out next to the senior center on the Brigham Hill side. Do we have, or can we ask Kevin and Paul and Brian, whoever is involved in this particular piece, see if that's an area that would be viable for extending our parking for the municipal center?
It would be. You'd have to level it and you'd have to put a retaining wall up. It would be very, very expensive. We can crunch the numbers and tell you what it would be.
Yeah, good. Would you?
Yeah.
All right. Is that something that we can largely do in-house if we were to buy materials?
Yeah, not the retaining wall.
All right. But the leveling and the pouring of the asphalt or doing those type of things?
Probably not the strips of asphalt, no.
It's gonna be really expensive then. All right. Well, if
But
you don't
I
mind,
can do it.
Just
I can do it.
get a
We'll
quick
look at it, we'll
quote.
do it.
It'd be interesting to see if that
My
was
cell
a
phone is
capital
going
piece.
away.
Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I got a couple other pieces.
right.
The ADA evaluation and the study we got a grant for is complete. We hope to have that presentation to the board on the 16th with those findings. Will now be eligible for construction grants through Mass Office of Disability. We just noticed yesterday that the grant round announcement and filing will be August 1st. So we will go through that process there. It's a pretty thick document that we'll go through on the 16th. So if the chair allows, we'll have that presentation then. Just in terms of future events, August 6th is National Night Out. That you all know we have a board meeting that night, but this year I'm trying to coordinate a municipal staff event to have everything from the senior center, library, trash and recycling, health, all those folks at a table down there. So, and even the Board of Selectmen, maybe we can all just go there, but maybe not have a meeting on the 6th so we can attend that event. Because we go down there, we sweat, or we get rained on, and then we come up here. It's horrible, but
Fine, we'll skip the meeting on the 6th.
it's just something that I want the board to think about. The MassWorks grant, we had a pre-construction meeting today with the developer, Alfonso, for the pre-construction meeting, so he is going to install that pump station. We are going out to bid for the sewerage line the end of July, so we look to start that project hopefully last week in August or in September, so we can tie into his pump station, but he's starting that now.
How long for completion on that particular project?
Do you know? I don't know the timing on it. I'd have to look.
We're looking at next season though, right? Next year, rather?
Yeah, well, I don't think it'll be functional until the spring of next year.
That's if everything goes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he was the big piece of it, because we needed the pump to pump.
He had to do his thing first.
Yeah.
I get it.
Grafton State Hospital, we are looking to close on that in the last week of July, and I know I've mentioned this before, so I apologize if I'm redundant, but we do have positive traction for Pine Street. We had a meeting with Criterion Development, who did the behind Spags, the development, that plaza, or not the plaza, but the housing development, Shrewsbury. So they came in and met with us off of a development team meeting. It was yesterday with Keller Sadowski. Our sales partnership agreement that we have with the state is being talked about in the development community, and Criterion, the CEO, was here yesterday, and we talked to him about pitching that site for affordable mixed-use development on that 8 Pine Street. So first is the closing, second is the go out to bid, but it'll be that type of group that designed and built that facility in Shrewsbury that we want to get in place on the other side of that bridge.
That's great.
So in terms of visualizing what it could be, that's
When does
pretty
the
good.
clock start? Does it start at closing? You know, we
Yeah,
only
we,
had a couple
like 1
years
to 5 years, if we don't do something, we lose some money. We don't make as much money, we never lose money, because we're only paying $1 for the land. And it may
I
be,
think it starts
right away.
yeah.
At closing.
Yeah.
So that's why
It's
we,
5 years? I thought it was like 3.
there's intervals of diminishing
Certain percentages as time goes on.
All right. So that's
So-
basically the state taking a little bit more back.
For
Yeah.
longer it takes, yeah.
In connection with that, the Grafton Commuter Rail Survey, we want to have a full summary report to the community, but one of the pieces that I thought was interesting, that 83%, we had almost 400 respondents, there's only 375 parking spaces, give or take, at the commuter rail station. The reason why we did it was to help with the development of Pine Street, so we knew where people were coming from and what amenities they were trying to buy, whether they're coming to the train station or leaving the train station. So it gave us kind of scientific, even though it's a small sample size of the people who park there, of what they need and what their use is. But 83% of the people who do park there are from Grafton. So there's another layer of that, of parking is at a premium at the MBTA station. So as your rep down the end of the table, you might want to tout the fact that parking is critical when you go to their meetings. I won't bore you with that. Shop Grafton, we did that back in December last year. They are having an organization meeting for that. Economic development is still growing. You can probably see the pieces on the wall over there promoting our priority development sites. John Allen's working with EDC to reconstitute the brochures and the letterhead and the message and the website relative to economic development, so that is ongoing. Viewpoint, for anyone who's been following the permitting system that we got a grant for, we have distributed iPads for the inspectional services, excuse me. I'm trying to rush, so I apologize. So we're starting to do the training, and it's live in the system. We had a mapping issue today in terms of getting data into certain boxes, but that is underway. There's a couple controversial things with planning, which you might have seen. There's a cell tower proposal at 84 Snow Road, and there's also a solar project at 155 George Hill, which could potentially be controversial, but I figured I would just mention them here because Joe mentioned it to me during a staff meeting today. We did apply for a Mass Development Technical Assistance Grant. I think I mentioned this before, but it's regarding the DPW facility and reusing that for its highest and best use as a gateway into Grafton from the east. So that, we were supposed to know at the end of June. They haven't noticed us one way or the other, except that they were delayed in giving notice for that grant. We are still hopeful that we'll get it. A couple other quick projects upstairs in Conference Room F. That conference room has been out of service because we're changing the lights in that room to accommodate better meeting coverage for cable. We are using cable funds for that project. I do want to acknowledge Bob, Joe, and John for their hard work on all the things that I just mentioned. Every one of them is involved in a piece of what I've just mentioned. And two final things. Airport Park has been underwater for a long time, and the playground equipment has been displaced, but we've, in part of our replacement plan through REC, that equipment's going to be installed on July 11th, so that'll make that park more usable. We've gotten a couple emails on it, we've responded, but if you hear anything, it's July 11th for that to be installed, so hopefully usable by the 13th. And then finally, just another reminder, we have an internal capital summit meeting with staff on July 17th. We'll look at operations, we'll look at long-term capital needs. So we'll all be on the same page in terms of what the outlook is for capital requests for 5 years. And then the week tentatively for July 22 will be a Tufts to share those results and to hear from the public if there are people in the public that think there's capital that we should focus on that we're not. We'll certainly take that under advisement at that meeting at Tufts. But that is the conclusion of my report.
This is spectacular.
One question. What time was that meeting on July 17th?
Well, the 17th is for staff. It's
Oh,
probably going to be 10 a.m.
Okay, but then the one for the.
That'll be an evening meeting, probably at 7.
So that's not been scheduled yet.
No, it's a tentative. It's like a hold a date for the 22nd.
Thank you.
Okay.
But it will be at Tufts.
How are you gonna advertise for it?
Oh, yeah.
No,
We'll do-
how?
Oh, how, we'll do Facebook and we'll send press releases. Those are the two main ways we'll do it.
Send a flyer to every home.
That's not budgeted.
Does anybody have any select board reports, excuse me?
Just have one thing I wanted to mention. We're talking to Roger Trahan a few days ago. He was the one that came in here and talked about the Commission on Disability. So I'm just trying to make a plug for that. I know that they wanted to reestablish that as a working committee for the town of Grafton. So anyone who's listening at this point in time in our meeting, who's interested, please reach out to the town's website. I can't read the URL because it's a lot of characters long, but if anyone is interested, feel free to contact any one of us. We can direct you or call the town administrator's office and inquire about where to apply for that committee. I think it's real important, but I just want to give that a personal plug.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, so do we have any correspondence? I just want to go back to, we had talked in the beginning of your report and kind of interjected like a straw poll type of thing for a policy. That's not an actual vote. Can you put it on the next meeting? Because if it's our policy for these type of things, the lease agreements and stuff like that, you get an offer for 300,000. If they come back and say, "We'll give you 700," it's a different conversation, So I don't know if you want to negotiate with these people in that particular matter. If there's another number that's palatable to the board, I don't want to run away and say just because they offer 300, if they come back and want to pay for a fire truck next year, maybe it's out there. I don't want to.
I think that the strategy you undertook tonight by saying no, they'll come back. So I think
they're
the way
watching
you
our
planned
meetings.
it is gonna be perfect.
That we just said no.
Yeah.
Okay. As long as everybody's happy with that.
Yeah, and there's no action we need to take because we're sticking.
No, when I call him tomorrow and
There's
say
no
they
action we
don't,
need
they
to
don't wanna
take.
do
Why?
anything,
We don't
maybe he
need
says
a vote
700.
to say no because we're just staying with our original lease agreement. We're not doing it, we're not changing our agreement in any way.
Yeah.
We're just staying with our.
Still policy, still buyout.
Yeah.
So policy should be voted on.
Well, I'm not clear on what you want us to put on the agenda though, so just,
Nothing, I'll take care of it later.
oh, all right. Thank you.
If it even needs to be. Let's see, goals retreat. Doreen, you have a
Yeah,
couple dates to line
so-
up, and of course Peter's gone for a minute. So.
Okay. Well, we can fill them in. So,
Yep.
so Bruce and I went over a couple dates I'll give to you all. So 2 of them are on a Tuesday and 1 is on a Saturday. So I guess the first question is, do we want to hold it on a Tuesday, kind of like we do with board meetings, or do we want to do it on a Saturday morning? So I'm proposing we think about somewhere between August 27th and September 21st. So I tentatively put in as dates August 27th or September 10th. Those are both Tuesdays. Or we could look at September 21st, which is a Saturday. So my thought is kind of like, let's get past mid-August, past potential vacations and things like that, but not too far in the year where we're bogged down with, starting to discuss budget and everything else. So I was thinking end of August to end of September timeframe, and just throwing those dates out. And then once we choose a date this evening, I can work with, probably Cindy on location, because where we have it is really going to depend on whether or not it's available. And I think booking this early will probably have our choice, but who's to say, really?
Two things
So-
real quick.
Sure.
I just thought about this now, not when we spoke before. When's the warrant get signed for October?
It has to be posted 14 days prior to the town meeting, so it is Columbus Day weekend is the second week, third
I
week.
think it's early September.
The signing of it?
Yeah, yeah,
Early
it's always-
September?
It's always presented in early September,
Yeah.
and then we give you a week, so mid to late, I think it was signed in September last year,
Yeah, like
so
the,
late September?
yeah, the
Yep.
20s.
Okay. So that's a good point, Bruce. Do we
Yeah,
want to make
'cause
it
if
before?
Somebody comes up with something super brilliant.
Yeah,
And we want to move
just
on
in
right away.
case.
I'm fine with the August date,
August
27th.
27th? Okay.
I don't know if everybody else is going through their calendars.
So that's a Tuesday? Is,
Tuesday
does
night.
Tuesday sound
It's
like
just
it works for people, or does Saturday sound like a better day?
I have to check with the family schedule,
Sure.
but,
I like Tuesday nights because they're already kind of predisposed to be
Mhm.
a municipal activity.
Fair enough.
And the weekends are just always crazy.
That's
Jen?
fine. The only, just to see the other side of the coin, the good thing about a Saturday would be, it would be more of a breakout of, if this is supposed to be designed to be something different than what we usually do, a Saturday morning might be a better option, but that being said, I can come on Tuesday, the 27th, I'm home. So, but I can see the benefit of a Saturday versus a Tuesday, but if everybody else prefers a Tuesday, that's fine.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think, planning this far ahead with families and stuff too, I'm sure that sounds like Tuesdays work better for most people. I would personally prefer Saturday, but I think I have more flexibility with a adult child. So, Peter's not here, but do you want to say August 27th?
Sure.
And then I'll work with staff on location and any requests of where we should look.
It's your
All right.
yeah, whatever it is.
And then that being said, seeing that you have experience with a few of these, I would dictate that you dictate what the meeting is going to be. Agenda
Okay. We
format
talked about
as manager.
having a moderator. I think that's important. And, I'll put together some sort of agenda so we have some direction.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you. Let me mention one other point. This is for the Board of Selectmen position. Where are we at with that?
We're gonna get an ad out ASAP, now that the new fiscal year started,
Okay. Any ideas?
for about
Yeah,
Who would
just
do it?
who?
yeah, just
We don't have any, no one's inquired.
Yeah, we had one application that was made last month that we have on file, so after we posted it and
Okay.
it's run, we'll reach out to that person.
still want it to be part-time position, answering the phones, things like that.
It's
No,
funded at part-time.
meeting minutes
Meeting minutes,
and
agendas,
agenda packets, putting that together on Thursday and Friday.
and then
takes-
office.
So the person that I would liaison for the time I have to do as a chairman, or for this particular event that we're coordinating and things like that, that would be something that would be
Put an agenda
encompassed in that
together,
role.
yeah.
Yeah.
They would do something like that.
Yeah, all right, that's fine. Exactly what Laura and everybody else did before. All right. I'm gonna wait for Peter.
Where did he go?
I don't know, but we have minutes, so if anybody wants to go through March 19th and April 9th. It's
I'll
too
make
soon
that.
for him to quit. It's been like 5 weeks.
I move the board vote to accept the meeting minutes of March 19th, 2019, as submitted.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I move the board vote to accept the meeting minutes of of April 9th, 2019, as submitted.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
As much as I don't like dead air time, we're gonna do it in a minute. Bill, could you put us in recess for 2 minutes, please? Welcome back, everybody. I apologize for the brief recess. We have one thing that I wanted to make sure all the board members were here. This is a discussion item, affordable housing locations. We mentioned before that September is, of course, when we signed the warrant for October. It's my opinion, and this is just the start of my opinion, that we start to take affordable housing and the Affordable Housing Trust role in promoting housing and going out and actually doing something to kind of take a leadership role in that. So my experience thus far in the couple of years I've been on the trusts and seeing how everything kind of plays out is there's a lot of the chicken or the egg type of thing. Nobody's willing to initiate the process. Nobody's willing to, move things forward. And when they do, they typically get muddled up pretty quickly in the process, and then they get put back on the shelf for months on end. So it's my impression that unless somebody actually takes it and leads with it, it goes nowhere. We have several locations that are town-owned property that have been dormant for a long time. We've had some discussions. We've had a lot of studies on some of these particular locations, but I want the board to take a serious position, especially with October coming up, to go to the town and see what the town actually wants to do with those parcels of land, and if affordable housing is something that they want to do with it. Because at the end of the day, it's town meeting that's going to decide whether or not it's going to go into the trust's hand or whether or not they're going to allow for development on those particular sites. But it's never gotten there. We haven't done anything with it. It's been a couple years now. So Affordable Housing Trust came to this board, I think about 16 or 17 months ago with a proposal, went back, did some study with Graves, looked at what could happen on the Hudson Ave property. And then we went from that and found that in the 60s there was a town warrant, a town meeting warrant that decided that it would be designated for a certain type of space, and then lay dormant for quite a few decades. If there is a appetite on the board to move this forward, we are one of the authorities that can put something on the town meeting warrant. Of course, we sign it and we can have our own articles. I would propose that we take a look over the next month or so of the sites we have that can actually be used for development in a productive sort of way. Multiple units, 10, 15, 20 on the Hudson Ave property. We were looking at 40. I think 48 is what we had in the concept and design. And then incorporating the housing trusts, the housing authority in town, those boards, and bringing them in and seeing if we can make one of these things real. So I'm starting that process tonight. That's why I put it as a discussion item. I want to get a sense of the board, and if this is a worthwhile endeavor, if I'm going to have enough support to move some of these projects forward if we propose them, or if they get proposed from the housing authority or the trust itself.
So, I think that the proposal for affordable housing, if we're going to be using affordable housing money, should come from the trust, but it should have the full backing of this board. And I can speak from experience also to say that it hasn't in the past. Every time the Affordable Housing Trust comes in here, all we hear about are reasons why a particular project shouldn't go in a particular location that's owned by the town. And certainly we've heard some good reasons why, some plausible reasons why, and some bad reasons why. But I guarantee you, and again speaking from personal experience, that any time you propose an affordable housing project, you will get vociferous opposition. You will get people coming into this room like you've never seen before. And in order to get anything done, you are going to need the full support, or the Affordable Housing Trust will need the full support of this board. So I would like to hear from them specifically. I know that you guys are still interested in the land off of Millbury Street that we were talking about 4 or 5 months ago now. So if that's what you guys want to do, come back in, let's talk about it.
I would go further than that, and I would propose that this board enter into a series of 1 or 2 resolutions. The first being that we are resolving as a board that it will be a goal of ours to qualify for the 40B safe harbor within 2 years to develop enough units to do that. I think we should pass a resolution supporting whichever lot that the Affordable Housing Trust determines they're going to move forward on. And then put it as, I don't know, I've never seen a joint warrant article, but I suppose you could do it. I don't see why not.
I mean, you could. I don't think the trust, it would have to come through us anyways, but.
That's right.
I'm not actually sure if the trust can actually put a warrant article on themselves. They certainly wouldn't be able to do one to get land over.
That's right, that
time
has to come from us.
Anybody else?
I'll go first if you want.
Yeah, please, Jen.
Sure. I am more open to the Worcester Street property. I do not think that we necessarily have to deed it over to the Affordable Housing Trust. I think the town has the resources to develop an RFP and see, when we can set the goals, and we can certainly work with the Affordable Housing Trust to make sure that their goals are met. But that work will most likely happen here anyway, even if it goes to the Affordable Housing Trust, and that way the voters have a little bit more control.
Why do we
And-
want voters to have control? I'm sorry, I don't mean
Yeah,
to.
the point of the trust is to kind of alleviate some of those things. The trust is its own autonomous unit. It has its own funding to kind of handle those type of things.
Well, because it is town property, and the voters in town have a say in how the property is being used.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have to vote it out at town meeting anyway. That's
Right.
their say.
Right. I understand that they have say there, but once it goes to the Affordable Housing Trust, then there is no say left, and I think you'd have a better opportunity of getting buy-in.
Okay,
if
so I
the-
don't necessarily think that's true, because the trust is not gonna go and actually build the land itself. They're gonna go and do an RP to, commission a developer and, see what they're gonna come up with, and then it has to go through the same process as any other development in town. It still has to go to the ZBA, the planning board, all those things still have to be, done. It's just the trust has money and funds available to leverage the development, to try to promote it, to try to engage a developer, cut down some money on some of the units that are gonna be affordable, to subsidize it, things of that nature. And that's kind of what the trust is supposed to do.
Well, I think we can work together.
We would have to, because it'd
Well,
have to be
that's-
friendly.
That's what I was saying. We would work together with the trust.
The idea behind the Affordable Housing Trust being semi-autonomous is that you are avoiding the sort of political pressures that NIMBYism brings to projects. And they are able to determine on their own, without that sort of pressure, what is in the best interest of the development of affordable housing. I used to be surprised about the NIMBYism you'd see around affordable housing projects, but I'm not anymore. I mean, we had a guy come in here who was, the chair of the Grafton Democratic Town Committee was apoplectic about an affordable housing trust, or affordable housing project going in near him. And then, I had that same person berate me for, not supporting Bernie Sanders enough. So, it comes from everywhere. And it always sort of blew me away, how strong the opposition to housing is. And you see it reflected in housing prices, you see it reflected in, families' inabilities to afford basic things, save any money, pay for college, because housing prices in Massachusetts are so high. You see it in our struggle to develop economically. John Allen can put together as many brochures as he wants, but until we get some real affordable housing in this community, we are going to struggle with developing economically. So we, in my opinion, keep it within the Affordable Housing Trust, remove that extra layer of NIMBY pressure from the development of affordable housing around here. Otherwise, we're never going to do anything. We haven't done anything in 10 years. We're never going to do anything.
So just procedurally, I think some of the fall down and some of the frustration I've had, on the trust side and on my position on the board is, we don't want to do anything because we don't think we're going to get the support. Or on this side, it's the trust responsibility to do X, Y, and Z or things of that nature. And I want us to take the leadership role on this if we have enough support, because if we do and say, yeah, these are some of our goals. We want to see the Hudson Ave property developed. We want to see Worcester Street developed or something like that. The only way to do it is actually go to town meeting, give it over to the trust, and let their
I'm saying that's not
resources-
the only way to do it. Well, which is fine. You asked for our opinion, I was giving my opinion, and then I was cut off. So would you like me to continue
Oh,
giving
I'm
my
sorry.
opinion?
Yeah, Jen, please do.
Okay.
Thanks.
So the Hudson Ave, I would like to see Worcester Street, that project move forward first. I'm not against affordable housing. I've never said I'm against affordable housing. Hudson Ave, their town meeting said that the cemetery commissioners came and said that land was put aside for cemetery use. So if we have two options, I would rather see the Worcester Street. I'm just stating my opinion. You can agree or disagree, but you asked for my opinion, and that's my opinion.
So I'm open to really any appropriate town-owned land. I understand some of it's been designated a long time ago for specific use. And I understand, to Jen's point, that Worcester Street has been, it's tried to been developed in the past for a fire station, and that failed. That's why the fire station is where it's located today. But I would like to make, a recommendation, or take a recommendation of the Affordable Housing Trust. I know there's new membership on there. I'd like them to get acquainted with what some of these plans are, and what these options are, and hear back from them, to Ed's point, and really get some direction from them. And be open to more than just one or two parcels of land that's appropriate. And then make an informed decision on what are the impacts of developing such land, not for affordable housing, but just developing it in general. And what impacts does it have? And I guess we kind of go into the traffic studies and resources that are available in the streets to make this all happen. So I would like to have all of that information, I think, before I would get behind a warrant article or present to the town voters at a town meeting about, what is it that where we would like to see it. So at least having some more information, and then getting some feedback from some of the new members of that trust, I think, would be influential in how I make that my decision.
All right, Tori?
So I hear what Jen is saying, but as someone who has been on this board for 5 weeks, and this is really our first discussion on affordable housing, I completely agree with Peter, and I think, right now, my opinion is, I really feel like we should be looking at appropriating any town land, and I would like to hear from the Affordable Housing Trust what they bring forward, because like you said, there's new members on the board, there's experts on the board, and for me to make a sound decision and be aligned with this goal, which has been here for a long time for this board, and for us to align, I think it's important to work together, and I would give them the authority to come forward to us. And I'm just saying this as my opinion, as my board member, as a board member of someone who is new to this. So I think that I'm not opposed to any town-owned land right now. And these discussions may or may not change my mind. I would like to see this affordable housing goal be put in place sooner than later.
All right, so in preparation for when this comes at our next meeting, I would recommend that everybody download a copy of the housing production plan, which was just voted last year. A lot of time and money went into it. It discusses a lot of these particular items that you're talking about now. I will go back to the Affordable Housing Trust and say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the Board of Selectmen is open to partnering to get something to convey to them. We spent some money the last time we went through this process, and it got basically shelved for a while. And then we were told to go and find other alternatives, which unfortunately we already have. There's only so much town land, there's only so much town land that can actually be developed. The particular projects that, Worcester Street may be one of them, may not be. It's a very difficult site, it's a very difficult corner, and there's a lot of traffic. The Hudson Ave one, you guys can go through this.
Yep.
I guess I don't need to explain this. Just know it's gonna be on the next meeting, so if you wanna, prepare for it, the housing production plan keys into a lot of this information.
Great.
I don't wanna hesitate too much. I don't want, the housing trust will be people that carry it forward, in my opinion, but if it's to Jen's point, if it's something that we wanna direct personally on the select board, I'm sure we can do something, work something out. My genuine feel from the trust is that, when they propose something and they spend a lot of time and effort on it, and even have agreed to fund staff hours for, to handle their end of it, the development piece of it, they don't get a lot of traction here. So I wanna make sure that, paradigm kinda changes.
Okay.
So I will ask them to come or prepare something and come to us. And then we can move it from there. The other piece is the housing authority also needs to be incorporated to this because they have the capacity to actually go out and to develop and to manage properties. And they also have access to a lot of different funding sources that the Affordable Housing Trust is not gonna have access to. So a TRICOM meeting, so to speak, on that end of town. So I'll probably give it a couple weeks before it ends up back on the agenda, so the trust has time to meet in the interim, but the housing production plan is a great place to start. So, and maybe after that, the master plan, if you can get the dust off.
Yep.
That's all I have. Does anybody else have anything else?
Nope.
You sat through the whole thing? You got anything?
Not this time.
All right.
I heard what I needed to hear so far.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have meeting, so you already did that.
We already did that.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Second, did you need a second?
I did, now I got it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are
Happy
adjourned.
4th of
Thank-
July.